Around 400,000 years ago, in Europe and Western Asia, a new human species emerged, Homo neanderthalensis, the Neanderthals. They were not our direct ancestors, but a parallel branch on the human evolutionary tree, descended from Homo heidelbergensis, an archaic human species that once spread widely across the Old World. While our own ancestors, Homo sapiens, continued evolving in Africa, Neanderthals developed in the harsh, glacial climates of Ice Age Europe. Both species belong to the genus Homo, yet followed different evolutionary paths. Neanderthals developed stocky, robust bodies, large brains, and anatomical features adapted for extreme cold. Sapiens, by contrast, evolved taller, leaner bodies, shaped by warmer, more variable environments. Roughly 80,000 years ago, Homo sapiens began migrating out of Africa, eventually reaching the Middle East and Europe, territories already long inhabited by Neanderthals. The encounter between these two species was not only marked by competition, but also by contact and interbreeding. Genetic evidence now confirms that modern humans carry between 1% and 2% Neanderthal DNA, a clear indication that the two species intermingled. The existence of Neanderthals is not an evolutionary anomaly, but a testament to the diversity of human forms. They were fully human in their own right, with their own history, adaptations, and cultural expressions. Their long tenure in Eurasia challenges the idea that Homo sapiens represents a singular evolutionary success story. Studying Neanderthals means more than digging up ancient bones. It means acknowledging that, for hundreds of thousands of years, another kind of human walked the earth. Intelligent, resilient, and capable of surviving in some of the planet's harshest conditions. In understanding them, we uncover not only a forgotten past, but also a reflection of ourselves. Part 2. Survival in a frozen world. During the Ice Age, much of Europe and Western Asia was locked in a cycle of glaciation, advancing and retreating sheets of ice, howling winds, and long, bitter winters. Vast tundras stretched across the landscape. Temperatures frequently dropped well below freezing. Forests thinned or disappeared entirely, replaced by open, unforgiving plains. This was the environment in which Neanderthals not only survived, but thrived. Their physical form was no accident. Neanderthals were biologically adapted to the cold. Their bodies were short and broad, with wide chests, thick ribs, and muscular limbs. Shorter arms and legs reduced surface area, helping conserve body heat. Broad noses and sinuses may have warmed frigid air before it reached the lungs. Their bones were dense and heavy, suited for a life of intense physical exertion. Unlike modern humans, who originated in the tropics, Neanderthals evolved entirely within these glacial zones. Their geographic range extended from the Atlantic coast of Western Europe to the arid highlands of Central Asia, and from the steppes of Ukraine to the Mediterranean coasts of the Levant. They adapted to a range of microclimates, from icy alpine zones to drier, windswept valleys, through both physical evolution and behavioral ingenuity. They were not static. Neanderthal populations tracked the changing environment, moving with game and adjusting to shifting ecosystems. During warmer interglacial periods, forests expanded and prey patterns changed. During colder phases, they returned to the mammoth steppe, where massive herbivores roamed. Survival demanded constant adaptation. This wasn't just endurance, it was mastery. Neanderthals built lives in places few species could endure. Their survival, over hundreds of thousands of years in such extreme conditions, stands as a testament to their resilience. In the harshest climates our planet had to offer, Neanderthals became experts not just in survival, but in life on the edge of extinction. Part 3. Minds that organize the wild. Neanderthals were not primitive wanderers drifting through the Ice Age. They were organized. Archaeological evidence reveals a pattern of deliberate planning and group coordination. Their camps were not randomly scattered. They were strategically positioned, often near rivers or game trails, maximizing access to water, animals, and raw materials. Hearths were central. Work areas were defined. Tools were stored. Refuse was discarded in predictable zones. These patterns suggest not instinct, but intention. Neanderthal groups were small, likely numbering 10 to 30 individuals. In such intimate units, social cohesion was critical. Cooperation wasn't optional, it was survival. Tasks were divided. Food was shared. Injured members were cared for. This level of coordination required more than strength. It required communication, memory, and foresight. Their tools reflect that same mental precision. The levallois technique, named after a site in France, was a sophisticated method of stone knapping. Instead of simply striking rocks at random, Neanderthals prepared stone cores in advance, shaping them to release flakes of a specific size and shape. It was a mental blueprint executed in stone, a sign of abstract thinking and technical skill. But it didn't stop at stone. Neanderthals also worked with wood, crafting spears that balanced strength with aerodynamics. Some were made from dense tree bases, chosen deliberately for durability. These wooden tools, rarely preserved, offer rare glimpses into their craftsmanship. There is also evidence of symbolism. Perforated animal teeth, shells stained with ochre, and other personal ornaments have been found at Neanderthal sites. These were not tools of utility. They were signs of identity, of connection, perhaps even of belief. Whether used in ritual or decoration, they mark a leap beyond the immediate needs of survival. In their campsites and their artifacts, we see minds that not only responded to the world, but shaped it. Neanderthals were not just reacting to nature, they were organizing it, understanding it, and in their own way, leaving behind the first traces of meaning. Art 4. The art of hunting in the snow. Survival in the Ice Age demanded more than brute strength. It required precision, coordination, and knowledge of the land. Neanderthals were not opportunistic scavengers. They were skilled hunters who targeted some of the largest and most dangerous animals of the Pleistocene: woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, steppe bison, and wild horses. These were not solitary efforts. They were orchestrated group hunts, strategic, dangerous, and deeply calculated. The weapons they used were simple in appearance, but sophisticated in design. Neanderthal spears were crafted from hardwood, sharpened and hardened in fire. Many featured carefully chipped stone tips, securely hafted using sinew, resins, or natural adhesives. These weapons could be used for thrusting at close range, or in some cases, thrown from a distance. Though most Neanderthal spears appear optimized for powerful, controlled strikes, but tools alone weren't enough. The success of Neanderthal hunting lay in their ability to act as a team. Evidence from kill sites reveals signs of coordinated ambushes. Prey were driven toward natural traps, steep ravines, swampy ground, or narrow passes where escape was impossible. Hunters waited in position, anticipating the movement of the herd, striking with precision when the moment arrived. This required an intimate understanding of animal behavior. Neanderthals studied migration routes, feeding grounds, and seasonal patterns. They could interpret tracks, broken branches, and disturbed soil to locate herds and predict their next movements. It was a form of ecological intelligence passed down across generations. In some locations, clusters of bones suggest entire animals were butchered on site. Cut marks on bones show a systematic approach to processing. Limbs were separated, meat stripped clean, marrow extracted from broken bones. Nothing was wasted. Every part of the animal was utilized: meat for food, hides for clothing, sinew for bindings, bones for tools. Neanderthal hunting was not mindless pursuit. It was a disciplined, often dangerous operation, requiring strength, timing, and trust. Injuries were common, and the stakes were high. But success meant survival, not just for the individual, but but for the entire group. What emerges is a picture of a species that understood the cold, the terrain, and the rhythm of life within it. Their hunts were not just acts of necessity, they were acts of mastery. Part 5. Fireside Life, the everyday world of Neanderthals. Neanderthal life revolved around the fire, not just for warmth or cooking, but as the heart of daily survival. In an unforgiving Ice Age landscape, fire offered protection from predators, a source of heat during long glacial nights, and a place for the community to gather. Around these hearths, tools were crafted, meals were shared, and knowledge was passed from one generation to the next. Their camps were not chaotic. Excavations reveal purposeful layouts. Hearths were centrally placed. Sleeping areas were separate from tool-making zones. Refuse was disposed of away from the core living space, reducing the risk of contamination. Such spatial organization speaks of a species that valued cleanliness, comfort, and practical order. Shelters, though rarely preserved, likely ranged from rock overhangs to constructed huts made of wood, bone, and hide. In colder regions, fires may have burned continuously, maintained by those too old or too young to hunt. Smoke-blackened cave ceilings and layers of ash are the only clues left behind. But daily life was more than functional. Some of the most compelling evidence of Neanderthal cognitive depth comes from their treatment of the dead. At Shanidar Cave in modern-day Iraq, researchers discovered skeletons laid in deliberate positions, surrounded by plant remains, possibly flowers. Similar burials have been identified in France and elsewhere, where bodies appear to have been intentionally placed and covered. These findings suggest more than disposal. They point to ritual, to memory, to mourning. Neanderthals may have understood death not as an end, but as something that demanded acknowledgement. Whether spiritual or symbolic, these actions indicate an emotional depth once thought unique to Homo sapiens. Their lives were harsh, but not devoid of structure or meaning. Beneath the surface of survival lay culture, routine, and human connection. Around their fires, Neanderthals built more than shelter. They built community. Part 6. Childhood in the cold. Childhood for Neanderthals was short and demanding. Fossil evidence shows that Neanderthal children developed faster than modern humans. Their teeth emerged earlier, and their bones matured at a quicker pace. By the time they reached adolescence, they were already equipped with the skills required to survive in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Survival training began early. Children observed hunting strategies, learned to handle tools, and understood the dangers of predators and freezing temperatures. Play, if it existed, was likely intertwined with skill building, throwing stones, sharpening sticks, or imitating the adults' daily tasks. In a world where every mistake could be fatal, learning was immediate and relentless. The anatomy of Neanderthal women was well suited for childbirth. Their wide pelvis and robust frame made labor somewhat easier compared to early Homo sapiens. But giving birth still carried significant risks. High infant mortality rates meant that every surviving child was vital to the group's future. Life expectancy was short. Few Neanderthals lived beyond 40 or 45 years, yet those who reached old age played a critical role. Older members, though no longer able to hunt as effectively, provided guidance, shared accumulated knowledge, and cared for children while younger adults hunted. They were living archives of experience, passing on essential survival strategies that could not be written or recorded. In Neanderthal society, childhood was not an age of innocence, but of preparation. Every lesson learned was a step toward enduring the Ice Age's merciless challenges. Though their lives were brief, each generation ensured the next was ready to survive, continuing a legacy of resilience that still echoes in us today. Part 7. From Hide to Stitch, the Technology of Survival. In an Ice Age world, exposure could kill as quickly as hunger. Neanderthals adapted by mastering one of the most essential technologies of their time, clothing. Though organic materials rarely survive in the archaeological record, Indirect evidence reveals a complex process of hide preparation and garment construction, crucial for survival in sub-zero temperatures. The process began immediately after a hunt. Fat and muscle were stripped from fresh hides using sharpened stone scrapers. If left untreated, the skin would rot within hours. Once cleaned, hides were stretched and dried, sometimes near fire, sometimes under the sun. But drying alone turned the material stiff and brittle, nearly unusable. To restore flexibility, Neanderthals soaked the hides in water and then worked them manually, pulling, folding, softening. Animal fats, marrow, and even brain tissue were applied to the surface, acting as natural tanning agents. These substances made the material supple, durable, and resistant to water. In colder regions, smoking the hides over fire added another layer of preservation, protecting against mold, insects, and decay. Neanderthals also used their teeth as tools. Heavy wear patterns on fossilized incisors suggest they gripped hides with their jaws while working with their hands, an efficient method for stabilizing thick skins during processing. Evidence from multiple sites shows signs of punctured hides and twisted plant fibers, possible indicators of sewing. While no needles with eyes have been found from the Neanderthal period, pointed tools made of bone or wood may have served the same function. Thread-like fibers from tree bark could have been used to lace or stitch garments together. These weren't crude wraps. In colder climates, researchers estimate Neanderthals needed to cover up to 90% of their body surface to retain heat. This implies fitted clothing, layered, shaped, and perhaps even tailored for mobility and protection. What emerges is not just survival, but craftsmanship. Neanderthal clothing was likely the product of skill, tradition, and adaptation, handed down across generations. It's an invisible technology, but one that shaped the visible success of an Ice Age people. Part 8. A legacy in our genes. Between 80,000 and 45,000 years ago, Homo sapiens began expanding out of Africa, into the Levant, Central Asia, and eventually Europe. There, they encountered another species already thriving in the cold, the Neanderthals. The meeting of these two human lineages was not only a cultural and ecological collision, it was also biological. For decades, scientists debated whether modern humans and Neanderthals ever interbred. The answer came with the sequencing of the Neanderthal genome. The result was clear. They did. Today, all non-African populations carry between 1% and 2% Neanderthal DNA. These traces are not fossils, they are active parts of our biology. This genetic legacy affects more than ancestry. Certain Neanderthal genes contribute to modern human traits, especially those linked to survival outside tropical environments. Variants influencing skin pigmentation, hair texture, and fat metabolism can be traced back to Neanderthal origins. Some immune system genes inherited from Neanderthals help us respond to viruses and pathogens, an evolutionary advantage in new environments. But not all inherited traits are beneficial. Some Neanderthal DNA is associated with increased risk for allergies, depression, or even nicotine addiction. These genetic remnants are not just curiosities, they shape how our bodies function, react, and adapt today. The legacy of Neanderthals is not confined to ancient bones or broken tools. It is written in our cells. Every heartbeat, every immune response, every layer of our skin carries silent echoes of that distant past. The story of Neanderthals did not end in extinction. Part of it continued. In us. Part 9. Why did they disappear? Around 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals vanished from the fossil record. Not suddenly, but gradually, fading from one region after another. The reasons for their disappearance remain complex. There is no single cause. Instead, it was a convergence of pressures, ecological, biological, and human. The Ice Age climate was volatile. Glacial and interglacial cycles reshaped ecosystems. As temperatures dropped or surged, habitats shifted. Large game animals migrated, declined, or disappeared altogether. Neanderthals who relied heavily on big game hunting may have faced increasing difficulty in finding consistent food sources. At the same time, Homo sapiens was spreading into Europe and Asia. These newcomers brought new tools, more efficient hunting strategies, and long-distance social networks. Competition for territory and resources intensified. In some regions, sapiens and Neanderthals likely coexisted. In others, displacement may have occurred. The superior adaptability of modern humans, with more diverse diets and flexible social structures, offered a critical advantage. Population size also played a role. Neanderthals lived in small, scattered groups. Their overall numbers were low, and their genetic diversity was limited. This made them vulnerable, not just to environmental change, but to disease, famine, and demographic collapse. A single bad winter or an outbreak of infection could devastate an entire region. Genetic studies show signs of inbreeding in late Neanderthal populations, evidence of isolation and shrinking gene pools. These patterns suggest a slow decline over thousands of years, not a sudden extinction. It's tempting to seek a dramatic ending, a great battle, a mass die-off, but the truth is subtler. Neanderthals may not have been defeated in a single event. They were overtaken by a changing world, one they helped shape but could not fully withstand. Their disappearance is not just a mystery, it's a mirror, a reminder that survival depends on more than strength. It requires flexibility, connection, and the ability to change, qualities that Homo sapiens embodied and that Neanderthals, for a time, also shared. Part 10. What remains? Neanderthals left no written records, no monuments, no cities. Yet their legacy survives in tools shaped by intention, in hearts that once warmed communities, and in graves that suggest memory, ritual, and meaning. These traces, scattered across caves and sediment layers, reveal a cultural depth that defies their outdated image as mindless brutes. They crafted weapons and ornaments. They selected settlement sites with care. They buried their dead. These are not behaviors of a species merely surviving. They are signs of a species creating, adapting, planning, symbolizing. In every stone flake and ash layer, we see not just the marks of survival, but the outline of a mind at work. For decades, the Neanderthal story was told through absence, what they lacked, what they weren't. But the real story lies in what they did and what they left behind. They were not failed humans. They were a different kind of human, shaped by a different world and responding with their own form of intelligence and culture. Their tools were precise, their lives were structured, their behavior was intentional, and their story is still unfolding. Archaeology continues to reveal new pieces of their existence, evidence that reshapes our understanding not only of them, but of ourselves. The more we uncover, the clearer it becomes. Neanderthals were not footnotes in human evolution. They were authors of their own chapter. What remains is more than bones and artifacts. It is a question. How many other human stories have gone untold? And how much of what we call human did they discover first? In studying Neanderthals, we are not just looking into the past. We are recovering a part of the human journey that was nearly lost, and finally listening to the voices buried beneath the ice. Part 11. Lessons from a Lost Humanity. Neanderthals were not a failed experiment in evolution. They were a mirror showing us who we are and who we might have been. Intelligent, emotional, adaptable. Their disappearance may mark an end, but their story still teaches. Studying Neanderthals reveals more than a parallel species. It offers insight into the nature of survival, how humans adapt, cooperate, and innovate in the face of extreme pressure. Their tools, their communities, their rituals, all point to minds capable of abstract thought and shared purpose. We see in them the roots of behaviors we consider uniquely human: empathy for the injured, care for the elderly, mourning for the dead, and teaching across generations. These were not primitive instincts. They were conscious acts, shaped by knowledge, memory, and connection. Their DNA lives on in our cells, but their true legacy goes deeper. It lies in our ability to face the unknown, to organize in groups, to share information, and to create meaning from chaos. These are not recent inventions. They are ancient strategies, refined over millennia by species like Neanderthals. In a world facing new global challenges, climate change, displacement, scarcity, the Neanderthal story is more relevant than ever. It reminds us that survival is not about domination, it's about adaptation, cooperation, and resilience. They did not leave behind cities or empires, but they left something just as profound: proof that being human has never meant being alone. We are shaped not only by what we build, but by what we remember, what we share, and what we choose to carry forward. In understanding them, we come closer to understanding ourselves. The past is not gone. It is within us, still alive, still guiding, still whispering across 40,000 years.